freshen my beverage. That's better. Well, I guess when you're going to be listening to this, it's going to be Memorial Day weekend. So, happy Memorial Day weekend. Wherever you may be. Go out, explore, enjoy, take some time off, grill a few wieners, do whatever you need to do to have a good time. I need another sip. All right, now we're good to go. You ready, Mike? Yes, I'm ready. Welcome to the show. Your first time here. Welcome back. If you've been listening before, my name is Darth Vader, and I am the most evil person in the world of women's photography. And we have a little show we do here every week or so that answers questions about women's photography, because you may think it's simple, straightforward, and easy, and it is anything but. So what we do every week here is chat a little bit about what you need to know so you can go into your session and walk out going, yeah, happy I did that. It was a good experience. Had a great time. Because it's not that simple. It's not that simple. And we talk about it all the time. You're like, yeah, but Mike, these are pro photographers. Well, what I always say is, have you seen Kitchen Nightmares? You think that just because somebody opens a restaurant, they have any idea what they're doing? You see these gross, disgusting kitchens and rotten, moldy food and incompetent people and management that has no idea what they're doing. Do you think it's any different in like photography? Really? Do you think it's any different than that? You want people walking into that situation getting like food poisoning and stuff like that. You know they're getting sick going in these places, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen in photography, and I've seen and heard about it way, way too much. That's the whole point of this show, is to give you the information you need to know to ask these crazy photographers so you avoid that kitchen nightmare scenario, because we want everyone to have fun. We want everyone to look cute. We want everyone to have a good time. And you're like, but you're a man. Yes, indeed. I am a man for all you misandrists out there. But as a man, I probably had more success and been around longer than like 99% of the people in women's photography. So I know a thing or two about this. So here we is. And the whole point of this is really for me to give you some information, like I said, so you know what to look out for. So you can ask some smart questions before booking your photographer. And that way you walk away with a great experience. And as always, the show, not for photographers, nothing here for you. There's no photography educational content. This is not a get-rich-quick podcast. There's nothing to teach you about running your photography business. If you want to listen to photography, just hit your back button. You're in the wrong spot. This is not the place for you. Go listen to like the Go Shoot, Level Up podcast. There's a lot of good photography podcasts out there for photographers. This is not one of them. So we'll give these guys just a minute to get out of here before we get going. Starting to leave. It's not that we don't like you. It's just not for you. Okay. So they're leaving. They're gone. It's just us. And as you saw on the title of this episode this week, we're chatting a little bit about the question, does a boudoir photographer have to go through any training? Are these people trained at all? They have to go through any kind of qualification? Well, cut to the chase, the surprising answer is no. And we're going to chat about how this can affect your experience as a client. So that's what we're going to get into today. And this is an important thing to know. Again, this is information that a lot of photographers do not want you to know, because they don't want you asking questions. They don't want you to be sort of on the ball. They just want you to be dumb, fall into their trap, and so they can take your money for a poor experience. So this is some good information for everybody out there. In the case of this, it's not really just related to women's photography. It's for any kind of a photographer out there. And overwhelmingly, people for whatever reason think that, oh, they're a pro photographer. They know exactly what they're doing, or they're so good. Again, kitchen nightmares. Would you say every restaurant, those people all know what they're doing? Obviously, this is not the case. And this is the same situation for photography. So don't fool yourself thinking that these photographers know what they're doing, because they just do not. Now, there's a lot that are very, very good. I know them, but you have to be really careful when you are selecting a woman's photographer. Because as we noted, boudoir photography is not like a regulated profession in any way. Anybody, and I mean anyone, can wake up on any given day and decide to call themselves a pro women's photographer. There is no training. There's no kind of license. There is no governing body. There's no international association of boudoir photographers that you have to apply to and get some kind of accreditation or something like that. That does not exist. Anybody can wake up on any day and go, you know what? Today I feel like I'm fixing women. And then 6 hours later, they've got a website on Squarespace, and they're calling themselves a pro women's photographer with no technical ability, no experience, no nothing. And now they are a pro. It's the equivalent to one of those people who have know nothing about running a restaurant, have no business skills, know nothing about it, and opening up one of those restaurants and running it like a piece of shit. You walking in there as a client and getting food poisoning and diarrhea. That's essentially what it is, and the way I always sort of liken it to, imagine you had a friend one day who woke up and said, you know what, Jenny, I'm a pro golfer now. You'd be like, what? What are you talking about? You know nothing about golf. Yeah, well, I woke up yesterday. I decided I was going to be a pro golfer. I drove to my local sporting goods store. I said, give me the same golf clubs Tiger Woods uses. I spent like $9,000. I don't know what golf clubs cost. $9,000 on the most expensive set of golf clubs I can find. And now I'm a pro golfer. You'd be like, what are you talking about? You've never played golf in your life. You know nothing about golf. Yes, but I've decided I want to be a pro. It doesn't work that way. You just can't declare yourself like a pro basketball player or a pro golfer and just buy a set of clubs and now you're a pro. You can't walk on the PGA and then, it doesn't work that way. But in photography, that's exactly how it works. People wake up, they go on Amazon, they buy a camera, and now suddenly they are a pro. Well, and this is the common age-old story over the past decade or so for many, many people who decide to get into women's photography, and it all boils down to this, whatever the inspiration. And I'm not saying you should not be inspired to, start shooting photography or anything like that, but they skip a whole bunch of really important steps, kind of like learning to play golf. You would think that would be integral, and being really good at it to becoming a pro. Most people wake up one day and they want to jump right to that pro without really paying any attention to the part that's the most important part in the middle. And as we've talked about and as we've seen on this show, the most important thing is, I'm changing lives. They want to get out there with that narrative, and that seems to mitigate any need for any experience, business experience, technical ability, or anything else. And with these narrative generation photographers, as long as they say something like that, everything else doesn't matter. So this just really creates a mess out there for a lot of people who want to go in and look for a women's photographer, because there's many, many people who start these businesses who have no background in photography. They have no portfolios. All they want is, like I said, that fixing women kind of narrative, and therefore, because they magically pick up a camera, suddenly they get these skills and they can heal America and they're going to be great photographers. And that's not really how it works in photography. It sounds empowering. It sounds like a good story, but for the client part of it, and I don't really care what these crazy photographers do, because this happens all over the place. these people waking up, suddenly declaring themselves, they can do whatever they want. I could care less. I don't care about photographers. As I've always said, when I've just been the unfortunate person to hear these stories over the year of a lot of the women who wind up in the studios or hotel rooms working with these people where they have no place, calling themselves like pro photographers. And it's just a waste of money for the clients. They have a bad experience. They walk away going, what the hell did I just waste my money on? And it's not a great situation for anybody kind of involved. So what I want to do first here is say that there are plenty of very good photographers out there. I know them. I see their work. They are truly, truly talented women's photographers, both men and women out there. They've been at it for a while. And I don't want to make this sound like everybody is bad, just like there are good restaurants out there. You know, these little places you find, like, wow, this is a really good place. But for every one of those, I think in photography, there are probably 2 or 3 really poor operators out there. So as we always talked about, it's like a minefield trying to find a woman's photographer. It's not even a coin flip. It's probably worse than a coin flip. And so the point of this whole show, as we've always talked about, is to just arm you with the information you need to kind of figure this out in your area and not wind up in one of those kitchen nightmares, you know, sort of scenarios. We want you to wind up with those really talented photographers, because there are people who they study, they work really, really hard to learn their lighting and their posing and their editing, and they run really great businesses, and they're really great with people. They're constantly trying to improve and to become better photographers, and they get amazing results for their clients. And I've seen these photos, I'm like, wow, this is a really good photographer. This is a really good photographer. And how do you tell the difference as a client? And it's not always so simple. And I think we've talked about this. There's quite a few episodes there. Is just don't listen to all the words. Really have to start focusing on the pictures right away, on the technical skills of the photographer. If you start hearing a lot of talk about fixing and healing and stuff, that's really like a bad sign. You want to focus on really the results, and you always have to chat with these sort of photographers. But I didn't want to really get too deep into that part today. To know this is a little bit of a different topic here, talking about these photographers have to get any kind of qualification. Do they get through any training? And as we've seen, the answer is no. So therefore, you have to be very vigilant in finding one of these good photographers versus one of these really poor photographers out there. So you say, Mike, all right, you got me a little afraid, a little nervous. Thought I was going to get a little bit of a simple, fun wedding gift. Now you got me thinking. The gears are spinning in my head. So all photographers are not created equal? No. Google's not going to tell me the best photographer in my area? No. What do you mean? But Google knows everything. Google knows nothing about a lot of photographers. They may know that she's in Topeka. So if you're in downtown Topeka and Googling boudoirs in Topeka, she's probably there. But Google doesn't know if that photographer is talented or they have experience, or if they're outsourcing their photos. There's a lot of things Google doesn't know about that photographer. And the photographer isn't going to tell you. It's up to you to go and ask these questions. And so that way you wind up getting into a situation that's going to be fun. So how do you tell the difference? Well, a couple years ago, we came up with a list of questions that if you're getting involved in women's photography, things that you really, really need to ask any photographer, women's photographer that you're getting involved in. And I put these in a blog post a while ago, and then I think I edited and I changed it a little bit over time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link that blog post, if I remember, in the episode below. We're going to review a couple of these questions here in this show, but you can go check that post. And I think there was a downloadable version of these questions too, where you could just copy them down. But these are things you got to ask. Important questions you got to ask any photographer before you give them any money. 10 cents. You got to grill them. You got to ask these questions. And one thing that is important to ask any photographer that you work with is, how much experience do you have as a pro photographer? Maybe that should be the first question out of the gate. And they'd be like, what? How much experience do you have as a pro photographer? And if they're like, well, started a couple weeks ago, or well, started like 6 months ago, that's not a good answer. That's not what you want to hear. And again, Google often doesn't know how long someone's been in business as a pro. And then there's no guarantee that just because someone's been around either means that they're any good, because time is not an indication of how skilled somebody is either. That's why this gets very complicated as well. But if someone's only been doing what they've been doing in terms of women's photography for a real short time, odds are it's not going to be a great situation, because women's photography is tricky. It takes a long time not only to learn like the skills of how to work with boudoir photography or any photography. It takes a while to be sort of very technically good at this. And, so someone's starting off, there's a follow-up to this, which is my part B to this question. But anything less than a year or two, I'd be really like kind of dicey about that. And especially when we get the answer to the next question, and I'll expand on that on a moment. But experience is so important when choosing a women's photographer, because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time not only to learn technical skills, but it takes a lot of time to learn to edit confidently and competently in like a boudoir style. It takes a lot of time to learn how to run a business. It's pretty complicated to do it really well. And because photography is such a low barrier to entry job, this is why this happens. It's not like opening up a big store where you got to start shelling out lots of money. You got bills and rent, and you got all this inventory or whatever you're selling, which is really kind of cash intensive. Photography is a low barrier to entry. So you get a lot of people jumping in who have no business jumping in and calling themselves pros, because it's easy to do. It's easy. So you get a lot of people in there who are not very, very good. So that's one thing where, again, you have to be really careful of. And the part B of what I was talking about, so if you ask somebody about how long they've been a pro, listen to what they say. The part B of that question is, how long were you interested in photography before you turned pro? And if you start to get a blank stare, or if you start to get like silence or anything like that after this question, it's a real red flag, because let's roll back to our story about golf. If somebody is interested in golf, they don't go from waking up one day to saying, I'm a pro golfer, and then suddenly it doesn't work that way, right? What happens? They're out on weekends, they're practicing at a golf driving range, they're going out with their friends, maybe they got a little putting green in their backyard. They're a fan of golf, and they're doing it because they love it. They're just doing it for the fun. It's like, right, to get better and better for the enjoyment. There's a lot of people who want to learn how to master something like that, like a skill. And ultimately, let's say if you're young, you may play golf in high school, you may get lucky and go to college on a golf scholarship, and then fewer and fewer of these people. And then ultimately, maybe a few of those people wind up being golf pros and being so good they get invited to play and win whatever tournaments they need to call themselves like a pro golfer. But the point is, they had some love of golf or some interest in golf and desire to practice and get better and better and better before they called themselves a pro. So with photography, it's very, very simple, very, very similar, in that people who are really interested in photography and taking good pictures are doing that initially because they love to do it. Now, they may not have been doing women's photography at first, but they may be out in the park trying to take pictures of birds or whatever it is, and practicing just because they really enjoy the art and skill of trying to get good. So they may have some story, I got my first camera when I was like 18, when I graduated high school, and it's always been something that I really enjoyed, and I practiced, and I would go to family events and take pictures, and I practice. If there's like some story about them having some interest in photography just for themselves, this is a good sign, because this is probably somebody who really found a personal joy in really learning the skill and becoming better and better at what they were doing. And ultimately, maybe they got so good that someone came to them and said, hey, you know, do you ever think of coming in and I'll pay you to take some pictures at this event, or I'll pay you to do something like this, or pay you to do something like that. And then it organically starts to form into some kind of a business. And maybe they go and photograph weddings or pets or whatever, or maybe at some point they transition to women's photography. But the point is, there's some story there about how they were passionate about the art of photography, and then that sort of organically at one point turned into a business. That's what you want to hear when you ask that question, and that's why that is so important to ask. Not just how long you've been a pro, we want to know that, but what was your interest? How long have you been into photography before you did this? Because what you don't want to hear is like nothing, or get that blank stare, like I said, or someone saying, well, I kind of just woke up one day and decided to change women. You know, that's really not the answer you want to hear, because there, again, there's no passion for learning. There's no passion for the art of photography. It's just someone whose friend told them, you took a really good picture of that chicken sandwich. You should be a pro photographer. And she was like, you think? And like 2 days later, she's like a pro photographer, because you just don't jump from zero to pro like that. It's a lot of people, and it's very hard to become a pro photographer, but there is definitely some interest. There's some passion there. There's a story there. There was some time they were putting in. Could be years just doing what they were doing on their own just for the fun of it. And then that kind of turned into a pro photography career. That's the story that you want to hear when you talk to that person who is going to be your boudoir photographer. You know, so even if they haven't been a pro for a short time, if for the part B of that question, they're like, oh, well, I've been doing this like 5 years. I picked up a camera and I did. You have a little bit more confidence in knowing that they sort of have a passion for what they're doing, passion for the artistry, and not someone that woke up and I'm going to change women and now I'm a pro, and have no interest really in the technical, or took any time to learn anything technically about photography. So that's why that part of the question is super, super important. Another thing to protect yourself is always asking, especially with women's photography, how are you securing my images? You know, privacy is a big concern in women's photography. They better have a great answer for that one too. If they're like, what do you mean? That's not really what you want to hear. There are so many missteps when it comes to photographers securing. A lot of photographers don't even have any privacy policies, which is the next question you want to ask them. What's your privacy policy? If they're like, what are you talking about? You know, that's a really bad sign. And again, people jumping into these businesses without really well thought out plan, that they're dealing with lots of really personal images of women, and they have absolutely no plan on how to secure these photos. What if they get a virus? What if their boyfriend comes in and they get in a fight and he takes the MacBook he bought her and runs away, and that laptop is filled with hundreds of pictures of women on there, and now he has it. It's like, oh, now look at all this stuff I got on my laptop. You know, and this happens. I've heard of this happening. And now your photos that you thought were private are out there because he wants to get the money back from that laptop. So he's got the photos, and now he's selling that laptop on eBay. It's going to wind up in somebody else's hand with all your personal photos like sort of on there. And don't kid yourself, because this is exactly the kind of questions you need to be asking. What is your privacy policy? How are you securing my images? And you will be shocked. You think this would be something super paramount and the photographers would have this listed on their websites? No way, no how. Always ask. And if there is no answer, bad sign. And another thing that is creeping up a lot, especially over the past couple of years, is just want to be a little sneaky when you're talking to this photographer and ask them, so, who do you outsource your editing to? Are you outsourcing your photos? And if they say yes, run. Run like the wind. You're like, what are you talking about, Mike? Well, now, as we talked about, a lot of people getting into photography, you know, they're not into the learning part. That's work. The camera's going to do all the work for me. I don't really want to do this. And likewise, when it comes to editing photography, especially in women's photography, it's a skill that's not impossible to learn, but it takes a long time to learn beauty editing, beauty photography, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work after to go through every single photo, and that's where photographers are earning their money, doing that and editing and taking out the pimples and everything else and doing all that kind of work. So a lot of people are like, I'm not doing that. I'm not wasting my time. And what they do is take your photos, your naked photos, and then they find someone on Fiverr in like Cambodia or somewhere and pay them like $10 or $15. They send all of your private naked photos to this person they don't know in Cambodia to edit your photos because that photographer is too lazy to do it. And you don't know that this is happening. And there you go, your photos all around the world to someone you don't know on a laptop in Cambodia or somewhere. What do you think's going to happen to him from there? He's going to be like, oh, look at these. And, this photographer is never going to tell you they are doing that. And if someone dances around this question, run. Because they are not going to tell you they are doing that unless you ask them. And if they're not, I do it myself, and here's my privacy policy and everything else. Doesn't matter how much girl bossy talk or girl power talk they're doing. They're sending your photos around the other side of the world. This is what I mean about people who don't know how to operate businesses like this, and they're leaving you at risk. This is one of those kitchen nightmare scenarios because it's going on in the kitchen. Out in the dining room, everything may look okay, but back in the kitchen, it's a shit show. Got moldy stuff all down there, got mold growing on the floor, and then you're eating that stuff, getting food poisoning. In the photography world, and they're out there sending your photos around the world, and you don't even know that your private stuff is being sent around the world. And it's something real that happens sort of all the time, So that's what's going on. And, being that this photographer you're looking at, oh, she's great, she's new, or he's great and he's new. Got to be really, really careful. Anybody can call themselves a woman's photographer. There's no kind of license. There's no kind of training. Doesn't matter now. Doesn't mean everybody's bad, like I said, but there are plenty of kitchen nightmare scenarios out there that you need to be very vigilant and ask a lot of questions. Anybody can call themselves a pro woman's photographer. It means nothing. They could have been a week ago working some other job. They could have less than 2 months of experience. They may not know how to run a business. They may not know anything about privacy. They may not know anything about editing. And you're like, oh yeah, but she's got a low price. And then what's the cost there? The cost is your personal photos risk being sent all around the world or not being protected. This is one of these things you have to weigh and sort of act accordingly. It's just like so frightening and so scary and something I take very seriously because the people don't know. And this is one of the reasons why I do this show is because, as I said earlier, I've heard all these horror stories from clients and from bumping into people at bridal shows and stuff like that, and all the horror stories that have gone on. And they didn't know. These women didn't know. They thought that, oh, she's a pro. She's got everything under control, and it doesn't work that way. And it's kind of out there now a little bit since we've been talking about this. People are wising up about this, and they kind of are learning a little bit, what to ask. They kind of get it that just because someone's calling themselves a pro photographer means nothing. And then they have to start asking some hard questions. So we got to keep repeating this. We got to keep getting into this until everyone's sort of aware and knows what to ask. Because we want everyone to have good experience. Like I said, clients deserve to know. Clients deserve to know the kind of experience they're signing up for. Don't pay attention to all the language, all the copy on that website about fixing and healing. It means nothing. You got to really start to dig deeper. You got to know what good photography looks like. You have to understand that if that person is running their business smartly, if they're a really excellent photographer, if they're on the ball with their privacy, if they're on the ball with all this other stuff, you got to choose. You got to be smart. You got to pick your photographer. You got to get in there because the alternative is really scary. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And this is the one thing that's super, super important. It's your time and it's your money as a client. If you are getting a gift for your wedding, going in to a bridal, you have to be super vigilant. Ask that photographer a lot of questions before you hand over the money. Do not fall for this girl talk and girl power and healing and fixing stuff. It means nothing. Do your homework. Learn what good photography is. It's your time. It's your money. They don't care. They don't care. They live in this kind of little bubble. It's your job to make those smart choices. Be cautious of flashy marketing. Be cautious of empty promises. Be cautious of super low prices. Remember, there may be a low price, but there could be a really high cost to going to that photographer, and that could be your dignity and your privacy. So, that's why it's super, super important to learn these things. So, in a recap, this is one of these episodes that gets me really riled up because it's just so flagrantly out there, and I just can't understand how people don't understand that this is kind of going on there. So to sum up a little bit about what we've talked about today is that anybody can call themselves a pro photographer. Doesn't matter. There's no training. There's no licensing. There's no testing. Just because someone calls themselves a pro doesn't mean they have any ability or skill or technical ability or editing skills or anything. Anything. It means nothing. Nothing. It is really, really up to the clients to do a lot of homework and a lot of question asking and a lot of digging. Read their referrals or read their reviews online. Get a referral. Ask a lot of questions. Be prepared. You have to do a lot of work to choose a woman's photographer in the 2000s. It's just the way it is. You got to put in that work. But if you do, you will be rewarded. And what I'm going to do again is say, I'm going to link to my blog post I wrote. It's a couple years ago now, but still holds true. And a list of questions that you should be asking any women's photographer before you get involved with them. We want everyone to be safe. We want everyone to have their cute wedding pictures, cute Christmas pictures, walk away happy and glad. And it takes a little bit of work. So that's why we're doing this show. And that's all I got for you this week. So stay safe. Stay safe. Stay safe, stay smart, do your homework, choose your photographers wisely, and you'll have a good time. Just don't think that all photographers are the same. That's your misstep. That's the big mistake you're going to make. So don't do it. Be very vigilant. Ask a lot of questions. Call them up. Get them on the phone. Run down that list of questions I told you. Take some time. Don't commit to anything right away. Let it process. Make sure they sound like they know what they're doing. Make sure they're not sending your photos out. You don't want to wind up one of these things where you're talking to your coworker and, I'm getting married in a few weeks and I was thinking about getting a boudoir session, and your coworker's like, well, my friend Judy just started a photography business 2 weeks ago. She's so good. She's so good. That's a hard pass in that situation. Thank you very much. But I'm going to find someone who's been around and then that's a pro for a while. We'll leave Judy for someone else to fall victim to. So just keep asking these questions and you'll be good. And again, I appreciate everybody stopping by, getting a lot of listeners to this show. So appreciate that. Everybody who listens and downloads these episodes. I'm glad it was helpful. It's a little bit different kind of a show than you may think. But I'm not here about doing this for me. This is just for everybody to be very aware of what's going out there in the world of women's photography. As you know, if you've listened to any couple of episodes of this show, you realize that's kind of the whole point of this, and just want everyone to have a great time, have fun. I got brownies in the oven, so I gotta go get my brownies before they burn. So happy Memorial Day weekend, everybody. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye-bye.